I see you now. Hi, everyone. Sorry for that delay. Slight change in Facebook, and we're just having to catch up. So I'm Karen with the Gaithersburg Community Museum. Welcome to our winter astronomy program on Indigenous Star Stories. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to tell you some of the programs that we have coming up. So the museum has a new virtual series that we're trying out for children ages 7 to 12. And the first program, this is called Supercharged Storytime. The first program will be February 15th at 5 p.m. We'll stream live on Facebook, hopefully more smoothly than tonight. Our first speaker is Ambreen Tariq. She has written a new book called Fatima's Great Outdoors, which has actually been on all the best children's book lists for 2021. And talking about, she'll be reading parts of the book and talking about camping, and it should be a lot of fun. And then the March 15th program will have author Kendra Brown talking about her new book, Small But Mighty, Why Earth's Tiny Creatures Matter. Kendra has promised to explain to us why we should like mosquitoes. Our Green Cocktails program is happening, and on February 11th, the talk will be on what to do about invasive insects. This talk will be for all ages, but for the adults out there, our cocktail partner for the program is Clear Skies Meadery in Kentlands. They will be doing a video on how the meadery practices sustainability, and they will be sharing a cocktail recipe that will go with the night's talk. So before I introduce our speaker for tonight, I do want to make a land acknowledgement. Tonight's program is Indigenous Star Stories, and I feel compelled to acknowledge that the land on which the museum and Gaithersburg sits is the ancestral land of the Piscataway. So now I would like to introduce, after all that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Caitlin Ahrens. Caitlin has agreed this is a topic that's been of great interest, and actually it took me a while to find a speaker that could talk about it, because we thought that you, our audience, would also find this of interest. So welcome, Caitlin, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I'm so excited that you have reached out for me to talk about this exciting topic. It's certainly an interesting topic, to be sure, because star stories, many people immediately think constellations, and that's certainly not just the case. So we're actually going to be exploring a lot of different ways that Indigenous tribes have been able to document different kinds of astronomical events through many, many years of events. So let's see here.
Well, I'm going to go off. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get right to it while my screen loads. All right, so if anybody needs a quick refresher, what is astronomy? It is the branch of science that deals with celestial objects. So it's not just planets and stars, it's galaxies and black holes and supernovae, and it's the whole physical universe. And so documenting different objects is one thing, but documenting phenomena is a whole different aspect. So think of it this way, is that we should be better about being timekeepers, exciting events in our lives. So how have we recorded astronomical events is usually through drawings, such as drawings from Galileo, but we'll get into other kinds of drawings here in a bit. But you can also do like wood cutting. You can now we have telescopes, we have rovers, we have observatories, we have all of these fascinating technologies nowadays. But think about 1800s and earlier, how were we able to document astronomical events? And most of it is not just on paper. Some of it is through rock. Some of it is actually molding the Earth itself for astronomical events. And then also buffalo hide as well. So it's going to be exciting to kind of get into it. So all kind of boils down to, how do we actually display these astronomical events without the use of words? So we're going to get into a little bit of basics with symbolism. And I also want to take a moment to thank the Museum of Native American History out at Bentonville, Arkansas. They have allowed me to take many pictures of a lot of their vases and a lot of their artifacts for this talk as well. And a lot of the pottery that you'll see here are from the Mississippian region. So just letting you know. So the very basic symbol that we're going to start off with is the circle, or most commonly the cosmic cross. So this not only represents the four directions, north, south, east, west, but also it's the symbol for Earth. Now you also have elements of the world. You have air, you have fire, you have water, and you have earth. Interestingly enough, you have earth and air symbols mostly for certain kinds of harvest celebrations. There's kind of symbols you can see a lot in like more of the Oklahoma territories, mainly because air is considered to be harvest time, kind of symbolism, a change of seasons, if you will, and then also like a change in lifetimes. So the air symbol is practical for that. Fire and water is also really good for symbols of season change as well, and then earth. But the circle can also have all sorts of different kinds of intricate designs in between too. So it can help with directional. So all the cool swirly patterns that you can see sometimes would signify that there's a dynamic in the universe, that there's some sort of force, and it could be a gravitational force, it could be a seasonal change, and that would be considered a earth force. Is something with motion, whether it's the sun moving across the sky or the moon moving across the sky. It has to symbolize some sort of motion with these kinds of symbols. You also have days and nights, so this would be considered a distance tracker to have certain kinds of dots. Open circles versus would be typically sunrise or daytime. Colored in circles would be sunset or nighttime. And you could keep track of, okay, how many circles until the next harvest, or how many circles until you get to the next village over. So keeping that more toward moon phases is the more practical sense. But if you were to travel long distances, it would be day-night cycles from there. So sun symbols are very symbolic, specifically in the north, the southwest region of the United States. You see this symbol a lot, but again, you get that four directional pattern with the circle as well. And the sun symbol is mostly common with summer solstice event type phenomena. So here's some beautiful pottery though, so you can see that kind of dynamic force with the circle in the middle here. Now you have a sun symbol with this one. That was probably personally my favorite. This one you have your earth symbol, and then you can kind of see it, but going around the outer ring of this earth symbol is rays symbolizing the sun there. So another interesting symbol is the star. And we're going to be looking at different ways that stars have been drawn here in a bit. But using stars in symbols will, for all intents and purposes, symbolize like, okay, we witnessed an astronomical event, you're going to put a star and then some sort of symbol to signify what that event actually was. So interestingly enough, though, not all stars appear what they mean to be. You have a morning star here. So morning star, you would see either the brightest star in the sky at dawn, or certainly the brightest star first thing in the evening as well. You're either going to see it really close to dawn or dusk. The Egyptians also had this as the morning and evening stars, symbolizing the lifetime of the pharaohs. So the Great Plains Indians honored this morning star as a symbol of courage and purity. There's specific kinds of ghost dances, at least with the Arapaho tribes, for this morning star. Now, interestingly enough, this is not actually a star, it's actually Venus. So this is technically the brightest planet in the sky right at dawn or right at dusk. Another interesting symbol is the moon. So this can be equated to different kinds of seasons again. And it's usually a moon and a secondary symbol for a specific time of year. So if you have a moon and a certain kind of symbol for like hunger and snow, that's going to mean winter. Any kind of bird symbol with a moon would typically be spring. If you have a moon and some sort of sun symbol, that could either be summer or eclipse. We'll get to that. And then thunder and rain symbols are typical for autumn seasons. So another beautiful piece of pottery here. So it would have almost like a half, almost crescent moon in the center, and then some sun rays off to the side there. So I want to kind of bring us back into some fun astronomical bits about the moon and sun, because as I'm talking about these symbols and talking about how these phenomena have been, let's dive into like a little bit of fun science in here too. So starting with our sun, it's a yellow dwarf star. So what I mean by yellow dwarf star is that it's really not that big. There are smaller stars in the universe, but there's also much larger stars too. So let's just say it's a medium-sized star. It's okay. So where our Earth is placed, distance-wise from the sun, we call this the Goldilocks zone. If anybody remembers Goldilocks and the Three Bears, it's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's just right for Earth to have liquid water. So Earth obviously orbits the sun. It's also incredibly hot on the sun as well. Solar storms are also a fun thing as well. But you could also have eclipses, but we'll get to eclipses later on. Seasons. So our Earth is tilted about 23.5 degrees. And as it's going around the sun, the North Pole and the South Pole would point either away or toward the sun. So if we were to have a summer in the Northern Hemisphere, it would be winter in the Southern Hemisphere and vice versa. So having all of this seasonal effect, we know it now because we've documented it so many times. So having Native Americans, indigenous people also keep track of seasons in their own way are also interesting, and they all vary depending upon what region you're in. And again, I'll get to that here in a bit. And then let's talk about our beautiful natural satellite, our moon. Formed about 4.6 billion years ago. It is the 5th largest moon in the solar system, orbits the Earth every 27.3 days, and it's in tidal lock with the Earth, which means we always see this side, this face, which we call the near side of the moon. Sadly to say, there's no dark side of the moon, sorry Pink Floyd, but there is actually a far side of the moon, so it still gets sunlight on the far side of the moon. But what I mean by tidal lock, again, is that we always see this moon face with us. But because it also orbits the Earth in a certain way, we get phases of the moon. So you get beautiful crescents, you get the half moons, the waning and the waxing, and then obviously the very beautiful full moon. as well. So full moon names. Everybody seems to have very much fun with the full moon names, typically listed in the Old Farmer's Almanac. These are actually of Algonquin tribe origin, so around the New England Lake Superior region, but it has been dispersed to other tribal nations as well. Each moon would have a theme. Now, we say it like, oh, it's the pink moon, it's the wolf moon, it's the worm moon, it's the sturgeon moon and whatnot. But those themes have a purpose, and that have then been adopted by colonial Americans. Whoa, dear. Well, that's not good. Interesting. For some reason, my shared screen went away. So let me try this again. Okay. I have no idea why that happened. All right, so back to full moon names here. So this is a very typical list of, at least through the Algonquin tribe. You have the wolf moon, the snow moon, mostly being the winter type moons. Worm moon, you're gonna get into a little bit of a fishing season with that. Pink moon. So you may think like, oh, pink moon, that's pretty, but like the moon isn't pink. Why is it called pink moon? Well, Algonquin, being in around the Lake Superior and New England area, one of the native plants of this area is pink phlox flowers. So this is when the phlox when pink phlox would blossom. So this is why it's called pink moon. So flower moon, strawberry moon, buck moon. So we're starting to get into hunting seasons then, sturgeon moon, back to fishing season as well. Corn moon, you would want to start harvesting, and so on and so forth. But again, not all tribes share this same naming mechanism. So like pink moon, for example, pink phlox isn't everywhere in the nation. It's usually around the New England area. So Choctaw would have a completely different set of full moon names. Again, indigenous to that area, of different berries and fruits in this case. So the blackberry, the mulberry, the peach moons. Funny enough, they have a moon of the wildcat and moon of the panther. You're not going to get panthers in New England. Luckily, but there was a huge boom of wildcats and panthers in the Oklahoma and Midwest region. So yeah, it makes sense that the Choctaw tribe would have Moon of the Panther. So events on stone and on earth, how have we used rocks and the physical earth and the dirt to figure out certain astronomical events? So one of the interesting ones is mounds. So most mounds are very much just dome, circular. Some of them can be burial, but not always. A good example of mounds is actually the Spiro Mounds out in Oklahoma. But you Google mounds in the Midwest, you would have all sorts of different areas of specifically Arkansas and Oklahoma. I believe there's quite a few in Tennessee and Missouri as well, where these mounds were aligned to certain stars in the sky. And you would sit on top of that mound and either purify your spirit, or you would align yourself with a specific star, whether it's for purity, it's for strength, it's for wisdom, it's for guidance. But one of the weirdest mounds we have is actually in Ohio. So this is Serpent Mound. So Serpent Mound is about 1066 AD. It is very much different kinds of alignment. What it looks like, it just looks like a giant serpent. It almost looks like it's going to swallow a giant egg, if you will. At that point, you can look at this and go, yeah, that's a really cool symbol. Okay, but no, every little squiggle and every little spiral was very intentional to an alignment of some sort. So it had to be made very meticulous for this. So in this sense, every squiggle you see are aligned specifically with sunsets of different solstices. The head itself points to true north. At this point, it's Polaris. And then the spiral aligns with the neck of the serpent to point. All right, okay, so that points to Polaris, and then the head of the snake points to summer solstice sunset. So it's very interesting to see just the geometry of this, and not just, well, let's make it a pretty thing with dirt and that's it. So you could actually go visit Serpent Mound, and with this beautiful reservation, they have this really neat watchtower looking thing. You could go up a couple flights of stairs and you can look down onto the mounds. You wouldn't be able to actually go to the mounds in person because it's all preserved, but you can go up on this tower and look down, and it's really gorgeous. So using rock, we call these petroglyphs. So petro meaning rock and glyphs meaning pictures. The famous one, the absolute famous one, is from the Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. So this particular petroglyph symbolizes the 1054 AD supernova that was also observed by the Chinese. So nations and nations and nations away on the other side of the world, I saw the same exact supernova event, which we now call the Crab Nebula. So this giant supernova explosion just lit up the sky so much that it absolutely had to be recorded in some way. So now we're going to get into one of my favorite topics personally. It's called the winter counts. So again, thank you to the Museum of Native American History in Bentonville, Arkansas. They have two particular winter counts on display at the museum. And I was able to chat with the museum and decipher what some of these interesting astronomical symbols were. And we got to chat with a lot of the local natives too. So it was fantastic to try to figure all this out. It's beautiful. So what are winter counts? So winter counts is essentially a calendar, if you will, but looking back. So what would have been one major event in that tribe's year that was significant enough that you're going to want to preserve it onto buffalo hide, eventually on linen too. Sometimes buffalo hide doesn't, it disintegrates actually pretty easily. So some of those winter counts would then be transferred over to linen. But those symbols really dedicate a specific event to each year of that tribe. So it could be wars, it could be sicknesses. All these winter counts would have, maybe they met a colonial and they would have, maybe they traded furs. There was one winter count that I had an event where they traded furs with the French. So that was very interesting to see what was that symbol there. So indeed, astronomical events made it to some of these winter counts. So the two winter counts I got to look at though was the Lone Dog winter count, which was of the Dakotas, and then the Linen winter count of the Southern Teton Lakotas. So back to science real quick. We're going to talk real quick about what are eclipses. So eclipses, you would have the perfect alignments of the sun, the earth, and the moon in some order. You would either have sun, moon, earth, or you would have sun, earth, moon. And I'll show you pretty pictures here in a bit. Now, interestingly enough, you may be wondering, like, now wait a moment. We already have this alignment, a lot. It's called full moon and new moon. Why don't we have eclipses every new moon and every full moon? Turns out the moon does not go around the earth in a very nice, pretty flat plane. Instead, the moon actually kind of bobs up and down. So think of the moon as like riding like a little tiny carousel, bobbing up and down around the earth. So right when there's a perfect alignment, so say like the new moon or full moon, And right when the moon is no longer going up in its carousel and no longer going down in its carousel, it's right in that perfect, not up and down movement. That's when you're going to get an eclipse. So lunar eclipses would happen during the full moon. Total solar eclipses would happen during new moon. So moon very much blocking out the sun. So a great example here is the 1869 solar eclipse. So there was an astronomer, but he was mostly known as a geographer, George Davidson. He explored a lot of the Alaskan territories. He went on an expedition because he very much predicted the 1869 total solar eclipse. He also came across the Chilkat Native Americans as well. And so he documented this with coronagraphs, very, very, very early images of the 1869 total solar eclipse. Now we can kind of picture where that path would have been. You could Google any kind of solar eclipse nowadays. You could see like, oh, what path would the shadow of the sun blocked out by the moon, where would that path have been? So this is what this map off to the right looks like through that blue path. Let's just take another look at that there. So this blue path, you can see that green sun dot there. That's where at the point would have been Alaskan territory, pre-Alaska, but that's what would have been the path of the solar eclipse at the time. So where were these two tribes with their winter counts? Where was Lone Dog, Dakota, and then where was the Lakotas? So notice then that Lone Dog would have been in the path of this total solar eclipse, and Lakota was not. Whoa, dear, what just happened here? Okay, Mike, sorry about that. We're not the only one doing technical difficulties tonight. So in that case, yes, the Lone Dog winter count actually had the 1869 total solar eclipse documented. So notice then you just have a very dark sun, in this case, the moon blocking out the sun, and then stars to represent that this happened in the sky, that this was an astronomical event. Another really fun event that we all hope to enjoy, or maybe some of you fine folks out there have enjoyed at some point, are meteor showers. So these are very much where you have multiple meteors radiate from a particular point in the sky. So we call these, for example, like the Aquariids. You would have meteors radiate from around the region of Aquarius, or the Perseids with Perseus, the Geminids with Gemini, and so on and so forth. So this, how meteor showers happened is because this is actually where Earth is passing through tails of dead comets, interestingly enough. So the comet itself, the actual head of the comet, the dirty snowball of the comet, it's long gone. But the tail and all that debris that it would have picked up through billions and billions and millions of years would still keep going around the sun. So the Earth is still just having to slough through all that cometary debris, and that's what brings us our meteor showers. And that's why we know the timing of the meteor showers from year to year as well, because comets themselves are very consistent around the sun. So if we know the alignment and the timing of the Earth passing through those dead comet tails, everything, that's how we know when the meteor showers are. So beautiful pictures, gorgeous, gorgeous pictures all over the internet about, what meteor showers even look like. It's a passing through the atmosphere has also been imaged by International Space Station as well. There's one in particular I do want to talk about, though. It is the 1833 Leonid meteor shower. So this was probably one of the most intense meteor storms to date. This scared a lot of people. This happened between November 12th and 13th of 1833. This first not only scared people, but also excited astronomers to go like, oh, what is going on here? We need to figure out what meteors are, what their origins are, why are stars falling. But it was estimated to be about 240,000 meteors in the span of just 9 hours. It was just raining meteors. And there's so this in particular is a beautiful woodcut, I believe, by a Danish artist. Forgive me, I don't remember the name, but there's been multiple woodcuts throughout either the New England area and certainly through Europe with this particular Leonin meteor shower. And lo and behold, the two winter counts, Lone Dog and Teton Lakota, have also documented the same meteor shower as well. So notice the two different symbols again. You would have a moon of some sort and a bunch of stars. Whereas the other one, you would have something of like stars radiating from a single point. So very interesting to see the different kinds of symbols, but they both match up to the year 1833. Now, there's a particular type of, thankfully, very rare event called bolides. So bolides is French for missile. So these are extremely bright meteors that would have some sort of sonic boom with them. So two in particular, one is the 1908 Tunguska Russian bolide. So this particular one, thankfully, was in the wilderness of Siberia, so no one got hurt, thankfully. But it created such destruction that it flattened the trees around it when it impacted. It was such a very intense event for Siberia. And then in 2013, if anybody remembers this one from all over the news, this one, poor Russia, this one was the Chelyabinsk Russian bolide. It was so bright during the day, it practically just lit up everything. And then there was immediately a sonic boom. You know, go find YouTube videos of the Chelyabinsk meteor, because you can hear the sonic boom on some of those YouTube videos, and it shattered glass for miles and miles. It set off car alarms as well. It was a very powerful event. So an interesting bolide event happened in 1822. This is a journal of science back in 1823. So the meteor of March, 1822, there was this whole article written by, at the time, Harvard and Yale scientists came together and would have observatories and document astronomical events in this particular journal. So they figured out the altitude, what direction it was going, at what angle. They noticed that there was a sonic boom as well. How big this thing would have been in the sky and how bright. They documented everything, which is great. So let's take that into account, right? So this is where most observations were had by scientists and went in that direction. Guess what else also is in that direction? Our two main winter counts that we're discussing this evening, the Lakotas and the Dakotas. And they both also documented it, the 1822 bolide. So Lone Dog, Dakota had a brilliant meteor fell, was the symbol that was documented. I really love the Teton Lakota one. This one is called the Howling Star, and it makes sense. No one would have figured out what in the world sonic boom anything was. That wasn't part of our vocabulary scientifically until much later. So having Howling Star as our way of saying what it was is so fascinating to have it on linen of all things now since 1822. So now we're going to get into constellations. So using the stars themselves to tell stories. Now constellations can serve many, many purposes. They can serve as a cultural instance where you would have a group of stars forming some sort of figure, whether it's a god or goddess figure, or maybe some sort of animal or some sort of apparatus, or some sort of technology like a telescope or a boat. They could also be very scientific. So we use constellations as an astronomer for boundaries. If we want to know where a specific nebula was, or where a specific supernova or black hole was, we would be able to figure out, like, okay, it's in this region. We don't just go, oh, it's there. We have to figure out, like, okay, it's in this region of this constellation between these stars. So we use it as a map, if you will. But they also serve various purposes as well, specifically with agriculture. Certain constellations show up in the fall and winter seasons versus the spring and summer. They could also be used for navigation. So finding the North Star, finding Polaris, you would use the Big Dipper or Ursa Major. So a very fun one is the Orion constellation with its magnificent belt. They're the famous three stars, and Betelgeuse, its big red shoulder, its badge of honor. So yeah, Roman and Greek mythology, you would have something with a hunting kind of symbol with Orion. So all sorts of different fun stories with Orion. It was a hunting partner. It was Apollo tricking Artemis to shoot Orion. So you would have Betelgeuse as his bleeding shoulder. Apollo sends Scorpio, the scorpion, to chase after Orion. So you would have all those kinds of interesting stories. But different nations would also use Orion as a way of either the great hunter or the great chieftain. So the Cree in particular had Orion's belt, in particular, were the three main chieftains of the cosmos. Inuit, where the belt were hunters, the sword of Orion, so the top right star, were the children carrying the furs and carrying the meat back to the tribe. Taipei had this whole thing as mountain sheep, and then the Chinook was canoe racing to catch the big fish, which would have been Sirius, which is also the hunting dog companion of Orion in the Greek and Roman mythology. Ursa Major, the biggest, brightest stars of Ursa Major makes up the Big Dipper. So Roman mythology, you would have interesting stories here and there. It kind of changes, depends upon what literature you read, though. But most of it is typically some sort of woman and child. The woman turning into a bear, fearing for her life, and then the child gets turned into Ursa Minor, the baby bear, and then they are brought up into the heavens for safety. But I personally like the more the tribal indigenous stories. So the four bright stars that make up the Dipper are hunters pursuing a bear, so that makes sense. The Wasco, the coyote shooting arrows to create a ladder. Now, while that sounds interesting, like, okay, why a coyote and why a ladder? So coyotes are very particular for the birth of the cosmos. So the coyote is a specific symbol for not just the mischievous type symbol that some Midwestern tribes have the coyote with, but also the coyote carried fire as well. So fire also symbolizes burning stars, and also burning of like starting and renewal and initiation. So initiation of the cosmos, the coyote typically gets to have that symbol as well. So the coyote shooting arrows to create a ladder, in this case would be the coyote creating a ladder to go back up to the heavens and either cause mischief or to burn more stars. So the Blackfoot tribe as well, you would have the seven brothers and a little sister. In that case would be Polaris, or the North Star. So how you find the North Star is you take the two uppermost Dipper stars You go right across and you hit the next brightest star in the sky. It's really actually quite faint. It's not bright, but the next bright star you can see with your naked eye is Polaris. That's your North Star. Taurus the bull also makes an appearance. So in Greek and Roman mythology, Zeus disguised himself as some sort of great white bull to woo Europa. You would also have the story of King Minos of Crete, where you would have a palace of Croesus for bullfighting, and so on and so forth. But mostly of the Dakotas, and I believe also the Lakotas as well, you would have that same scenario where you have the great white buffalo. So a very majestic beast, if you will, to not only signify strength, but also just something almost out of reach, almost like an urban legend, if you will. Cassiopeia, so wife of King Cepheus and mother to Andromeda, very jealous of Andromeda's beauty. This is kind of starting to sound like a Cinderella fairy tale where Cassiopeia is very vain. She even chains Andromeda to a rock. And so as punishment by Poseidon, Cassiopeia is chained to a chair and to forever look into a mirror. Yikes. Man, Greek and Roman mythology are weird. But the Yakima tribe, which is out at Washington State in the northwest region of the US, in this case, this is more of an elk skin or a cosmic winter count type constellation. So now we're going to get into Cygnus, which is a very, very interesting constellation, not just for tribal reasons, but also culturally on a global scale. So Cygnus is a very interesting constellation, not only because it looks like a cross, but it very much looks like a giant wingspan of a bird, but where it's placed in the sky. So Cygnus, in the center of it, actually aligns with the Milky Way, and then its wings span across one of the arms of our great Milky Way galaxy. And this is very important to many different kinds of cultures. So not just to indigenous cultures, but also to Asian cultures as well. Excuse me. So Cygnus, or any kind of bird symbol, is usually some sort of bridge or messenger for life here on Earth and to spirit worlds. So Greek mythology typically has this as a symbol of life and death. So you would have people on Earth wanting to give praise to lost loved ones or lost lovers to the skies. You would have messengers of birds in the Greek and Roman mythologies. To the Chinese and Japanese, specifically of the Japanese, you would have the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. A flock of magpies would form to reunite lovers. So that's actually how the whole, there's a whole festival around it as well. You would have almost immortal goddess female falling in love with the poor farmer mortal boy, and she comes down to visit and they fall in love, and she was banished back up into the cosmos because she can't fall in love with the mortal farm boy. And so the magpies took pity on the lovers and formed a bridge with their wings across the galaxy for the lovers to meet once a year. So again, any kind of bird symbol uses this as a message to the cosmos or to a spirit realm. So magpies and crows are very specific for ghost dance shirts. So ghost dance shirts are very symbolic for not only ceremonial instances, but also for signifying different kinds of events that your particular tribe would go through, whether it's a chieftain passing away or bringing life into the world. So maybe a birth as well. So look at the different kinds of symbols going on with these shirts. So most of these are Arapaho, but especially the one off to the right, that is definitely Arapaho ghost dance shirt. So again, the symbolism between Cygnus the swan and also using magpies and crows on ghost dance shirts are one and the same, using that same kind of symbology. So again, also with constellations, so back to Orion, for instance. So Orion being not only the hunter type symbol, but Orion really shows up well in the later parts of the year, at least particularly in the evening. And so once you see Orion, you know that it's hunting season. You know that you should be ready to harvest. You should be gathering your meat to survive the long, cold winters. But then there's some constellations that only show up in the spring and summer. So seeing those kinds of symbols and get ready for fishing season and get ready for harvesting, what should be planted in the ground. So all of these really wonderful symbols have been documented in some way, whether on clothing or on stone or using the dirt on our own earth, or even on winter counts, and using that as a way to tell a tribe's story of, look what we have done. And it's so fascinating to see those all the way from the 1820s, which you wouldn't think to be that old, but looking through American history in general, a lot has happened in the 1800s in general. So having some sort of documentation through indigenous native eyes and artistry and figuring out all those symbols, really quite fascinating. And to have astronomical events be documented is something fascinating entirely. So again, I would love to thank the Gaithersburg Community Museum for having me here this evening, and also the Museum of Native American History in Bentonville, Arkansas, for allowing me to take pictures and document their winter counts and very beautiful vases. And happy to take any questions. But thank you again so much for listening tonight.
Thank you. That was so interesting, Caitlin. And we do have some questions. So I'm just going to share them, and please, if anybody out there has a question, just type it in and we will get the question to Caitlin to answer. So the first question comes from Timothy. I won't say your last name because I might butcher it. He asked, how is it that the Chaco Canyon glyph is associated with the 1054 supernova? I mean, how do you know that, because it was just like a hand and a star and a moon. Like
that's a very good question. So there's a couple answers. By all means, it's still very hypothetical or theoretical, I should say. But one in particular is the Anasazi tribes pay particular close attention to where all these petroglyphs are. They keep documents as to, like, okay, here's one, where is it located at, and what's the symbols and everything. So they have a pretty good documentation of where these multiple petroglyphs are. Another way to tell too is to do very, very careful analysis of how old would the paint be on the rock as well. You can kind of get a sense of, very similar to how you figure out how old paintings are. You can figure out how old certain paints are from the Renaissance. You usually do this with more Italian and French paintings, but you can do this very well with petroglyphs. But to have something that old, like 10, 50, some 80, very, very old. So it would have been weathered through all the years as well. But to have it that preserved pretty well too is very unique in that sense too.
Okay, that's so interesting. Kelsey just wanted to let you know that it's a very interesting program and that she appreciates the historical comparison between the different cultures. Tony asks, how did Native Americans name and interpret the wandering stars, our planetary neighbors?
That's a good question. So typically, like I said, Venus was a really big one. They didn't really pay particular mind to Jupiter and Saturn, which can be very bright in the night sky for sure. Mars is considered a more summer planet. So summer, seeing Mars as just like a bright star that does move across the sky and then it disappears in the winter. that does happen to be a summer harvest type moving star, wandering star in that case. But Venus was the better one because it's so bright and it's the first thing you see either at dawn or at dusk. It's going to symbolize either the ending of a day or the beginning of a new day. So that's why it's considered more of a purity symbol star planet.
Okay. Denise just wanted you to know she liked the presentation. You were talking about the bolide meteors. Was the one that over Pittsburgh just recently, was that also a bolide? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. I don't recall if there was a major boom with it. If you see something very bright, that's one thing. It just means that it was just a big honking meteor for sure. But it would have to have some sort of boom effect to make it a bolide.
I'm trying to remember the reports. I think there was like a loud noise, but a loud noise versus a sonic boom. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been just like a small bolide and it crashes through the atmosphere. That could very well happen. You can have almost like a sizzling noise as it's cracking up through the atmosphere and it's heating up and rocks flying all over the place. This poor meteor, happily in space come crashing through the atmosphere. Oops. But no, the major event bolides would be extremely bright.
Okay.
The tail itself would probably last more than a day.
Wow.
They last for quite a few hours.
Wow.
They make noise.
That's amazing. If you don't mind our asking, what is your favorite constellation? Do you have one?
I do happen to have one. It's kind of named weird, but I love the naming scheme of it though. So the name of the constellation is called Camelopardus. I may have butchered that name. What it means is camel leopard, and the constellation is a giraffe.
Oh.
Makes sense.
Lots of thank yous. Great presentation. So I think that's the end of our questions, though. Was really a great presentation. Before we go, I do want to tell everybody that starting in April, we'll be having in-person observatory skywatching programs. We're super excited to do something normal. And I don't know if any of you who are watching came to the Webb and International Observe the Moon Night program in October, but yeah, we're gonna start up again end of April, and it'll be monthly, just like we used to do it. And now Caitlin's promised to give some talks for us, so you might be seeing a little bit more of her. So we're very excited about that. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you in April.